Hey everybody, I want to make some more saturated glazes to use in decorating my pots. And if you've been watching my channel, a couple months ago I did a line blend using a glaze from this book. On page 72 there's a glaze called Campana Clear, and I really like the base glaze and it really works really nice on my pots and on my clay. And I just think it's a really beautiful glaze. I love the way it pools in the cracks and it shows off the texture of my pots. And it's just beautiful on the frost porcelain I'm using. So I've really fallen in love with this glaze. But I've been using it in low concentrations, real low concentrations of, oxides in there. So I've been using really light colors, and I want a little punch of color for a few little accents. And so I'm going to be doing that with, I'm going to make some line blends of copper and one of cobalt. But in addition to that, what I'm really excited about was I got a pound of praseodymium oxide. And if you watch the old line blend video I did on this glaze, I used erbium and neodymium oxide, which if you look on the periodic table, they're on this strip right here. These elements right here, I'll call it the lanthonides. And erbium is over here. Neodymium, which I really like, is right there. Absolutely love these two. And then we have praseodymium, which I just bought right here. Never used it before. Really anxious to try it. Can't wait to see what happens. So I'm gonna see if I can do a line blend and get some really nice bright greens using that. In that last video I made about the rare earth ingredients, or the lanthonides, I explained that I was inspired by an article by David Peer in Ceramics Monthly. It's a really great article. I had never even heard of a rare earth or a lanthanide until I read that article. They're just amazing elements, and he does a really good job of explaining it, and you can see his work there. So I'm going to put a link in the description for that, and also put a link in the description for my first video on that. In addition to those, I'm also going to be trying a little bit of chromium oxide. I really don't like to use chromium or chrome in my glazes at all. I don't even really like to have it in my studio. But it's like one of these things where somebody was cleaning out a studio for an estate sale, and there was like a whole bunch of boxes of stuff. Like I got a Giffen grip and a bunch of different glaze chemicals, and there just happened to be chrome in there. Chrome at really low concentrations can sometimes lead to some pretty nice colors. At high concentrations, of course, you get the typical chrome green. But this stuff is pretty nasty. I don't like to have it around. So we're going to try it out on 0.125%, really low percentage. And if it makes a nice green, it might be a nice accent color on the outside of a piece. In the blender, we have a 200 gram batch of Campana Clear. Again, that's on page 72 of John Brate's The Complete Guide to Mid-Range Glazes. And I'm going to be adding copper carbonate to this to make what's called a line blend. And I'm going to do it in 1% increments. We're going to go from 1% to 5% on the bottom of each tile using an underglaze pencil. I have marked it so COP, that's for short for copper of course, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up to 5, and so on. And so that underglaze pencil will stay on the kiln, and then I'll be able to tell what this is when it comes out. So because this is a 200 gram batch, I'm going to be adding 2 grams of copper to make 1%. Okay, because 2 is 1% of 200. And I'm going to add it into the blender, mix it up, dip the tile in it, add 2 more grams, because that would be another percent. And then I'm going to dip a tile in that after I mix it up, and then 2 more grams, mix, dip a tile, and so on until I get to 5. I'm going to time lapse this all because I'm going to have my air conditioner on here and it's going to be noisy. And so we'll just go ahead and time lapse it. I'm going to set it to 2 grams. I've zeroed out the scale. I'm going to set it to 2 grams. And then I'm going to go ahead and put on my respirator. And we'll fast forward this all so you can kind of see it all happening. But hopefully it should get darker green through here. Here's the copper. Alright, now I've completed my line blend here, and you can see on the low end of the copper, this is the 1%, how it goes from light to dark here. So our goal is that it does the same thing after we fire it. It should be a really light turquoise green down here. And we'll have to see what color comes out on the 5% end, because I don't think I've ever tested it. And now we're going to do the same thing with cobalt, but for cobalt, I'm going to start at the really low end. We're going to start at like maybe a 0.25%, so a 1/4% of cobalt, because cobalt's a really strong oxide, and maybe we'll go up to 3%. So we're going to do 0.5, 1, 2, and then 3% to see what that looks like. I'm not going to film the mixing of the cobalt. You kind of get the idea of how to make a line blend, but I will share the results when it comes out of the kiln. And for the praseodymium, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, 1%, 2%, all the way up to 8%. And I won't film the mixing of that either. It's you can kind of see how the line blend works, and I have another video on this already, and I'll share the results with you when they come out of the kiln. So the kiln has been unloaded and ready to look at the results of our line blend. The first one is the praseodymium, and I am not a photographer, I'm not a videographer, I make pots and I teach high school. So I hope you can see the color clearly on this. I've done my best to get the white balance right and to make sure the exposure is pretty close. But this down at this end at the 7%, it's almost neon. It's a pretty incredible color. So of course what we have here is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7%. And in my opinion, it looks best at the 7%. And the color here is just unreal. You can see how it formed these really just jewel-like drips here at the bottom. Wow, pretty cool stuff. Yeah, and it seems to react well with the glaze base and everything like that. It's pretty interesting stuff. I really like it. I ran quite a bit here. You can see it pooled up in where there's texture. And my kiln fire is a little uneven. It's about cone 7 at the top, maybe a little bit cooler at the bottom. And these were pretty close to the top, so I'm wondering if maybe a little less heat, you'd get more even color distribution in the base. Either way, just absolutely love it. Really cool stuff. And then we have the copper. So here's our line blend of the copper. Kind of what I expected. I've already used 1 and 2% before, so I was pretty well knew what to expect there. So what I wanted is something a little bit more saturated to use as an accent color. And here we go. This is 3%, getting pretty dark there. 4% and 5%. Now I don't really care for this too much all by itself. So what I wanted to use this for, here's an example. So this is the clear base. So it's the same base, it's clear, but it's painted over the top of the 5%. So what I want to be able to do is paint certain areas with the green and then put the whole thing in clear to accent areas and get a nice color. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's the 5% under the Campana clear base. So it's clear all the way on the whole thing, and I just painted one little stripe of the 5% there under the clear. So pretty cool there. cobalt. So this is a 1/4%. And I had a little accident. We spilled some cobalt there, so it's kind of everywhere. Ooh, that stuff is powerful. Anyway, you can see the 1/4% there. It's kind of a nice light blue color. At 0.5%, we're getting dark. And 1% is pretty dark. And then we have 2 and 3. Pretty saturated there, really pretty saturated there. Again, what I wanted to use this for is an accent under a clear or under a turquoise. So we have the cobalt here with the base glaze, the Campana clear, over the whole thing. So I painted one stripe of the cobalt and then I dipped it in the clear afterwards. And that's kind of what I was going for. So really like that. That's the 3% with the clear over the top of it. And same thing, here's the 1% of the copper over a brush stroke of the 3% of the cobalt. Like that a lot. And if you remember, we had one more test. It was the chrome at 0.125%. And whoa, it's ugly. It is really kind of nasty. I was hoping for a bright green, not so much. Yeah, let's just forget about that. Anyway, you can see kind of the cool things. Here's the praseodymium, the copper, and the cobalt under the clear. Really cool effect there. And I can't wait to use this with, some of the rare earth colors. This is the erbium right here, and also have neodymium. So that should be pretty cool along with those colors, almost like a candy store. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that, and be looking forward to some pots coming out with these. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.